There exists an illusion that has haunted humanity since the first man cast bones upon the sand and saw in them a pattern. It is the belief that chance has memory, that the universe, in its indifferent vastness, keeps a ledger of our victories and defeats, and that a sequence of successes is the inevitable harbinger of more successes. This is the hot hand fallacy, and it has been destroying fortunes since there have been fortunes to destroy. It is not merely an error in calculation. It is a psychological trap that transforms our triumphs into poison, our confidence into arrogance, and our luck into curse. At this very moment, as you hear these words, millions of men and women are making financial decisions based on this same lethal illusion. They believe they can ride the wave of momentum, that they can sniff out the next great trend, that their recent victories are proof of superior skill, when in truth, they are merely the random echo of chaos. And to understand why this belief is so dangerous, I must tell you the story of a man who devoted his life to chasing patterns where no patterns existed. A man who mistook noise for signal and paid the highest price a speculator can pay. There was a man known in the trading floors simply as the Hunter. His true name had been forgotten long ago, consumed by the obsession that defined every moment of his existence. He did not trade stocks or commodities out of necessity, but from an almost religious conviction that he possessed a gift. The gift of seeing the invisible, the gift of detecting trends before they fully manifested. In his mind, every market movement was part of a grand tapestry, and he, and only he, could decipher its hidden patterns. His office was a cave of paper and ink. Charts covered the walls like the cave paintings of some primitive tribe worshipping numbers. Red and black lines snaked through decades of data, each marked with annotations in his increasingly desperate handwriting. There were maps of imaginary correlations, tables of lunar cycles and market movements, complex systems based on Fibonacci, Elliott waves, and a dozen other financial pseudosciences. But the true altar of his faith was simpler. It was a black slate where he recorded his recent victories, 5 profitable trades in a row, 7, 10. Each new mark of white chalk was a confirmation of his core theory. When you're hot, you're hot. And when you're hot, you must bet everything. The hot hand fallacy takes its name from a phenomenon observed in basketball. Observers of the game believe that a player who has made several consecutive shots has a higher probability of making the next one. The crowd roars for him. Commentators speak of being in the zone. But when researchers analyzed the data, they discovered something disturbing. There is no hot hand. The probability of a player making a basket after 3 consecutive baskets is statistically identical to their normal shooting percentage. What appears to be significant pattern is simply the natural result of randomness. In any long sequence of independent events, clusters of successes and failures will occur naturally. But the human brain, that marvelous pattern recognition machine that evolved to see predators hidden in tall grass, cannot accept this truth. It sees connections where there are no connections. It sees causality where there is only coincidence. And in financial markets, this inability to comprehend randomness transforms into something more sinister. The Hunter had experienced an extraordinary run of successes. For 6 months, each of his bets had materialized. He had bought technology stocks just before they soared vertically. He had shorted companies that collapsed the following week. He had entered and exited positions with a precision that seemed supernatural. His portfolio had tripled, then quintupled. And with each victory, his conviction solidified like concrete in his mind. He wasn't getting lucky. He had decoded the market. He had found the master pattern. And now, finally, it was time to make the bet that would define his life. But there was a truth that the Hunter could not see, blinded as he was by the glare of his own successes. Each of his victories had been independent of the previous one. The technology stock he bought had risen not because he was skillful, but because unexpected news about a government contract had broken the next day. The company he shorted had collapsed not because his charts predicted it, but because its CEO was involved in fraud that no one knew about. He had hit the jackpot on a roulette wheel several times in a row and concluded that he had discovered how to predict where the ball would land. And now, with all his fortune and more borrowed money besides, he was about to bet everything on red. This is the cruel nature of the hot hand fallacy in financial markets. It deceives us precisely when we are most vulnerable. After a series of victories, our confidence reaches dangerous levels. Psychologists call this outcome-induced overconfidence. We begin to attribute our successes to skill rather than luck, and this misattribution has devastating consequences. First, we increase the size of our bets, believing that our hot hand will make these larger bets even more profitable. Second, we reduce our critical analysis because we feel our instinct is working perfectly. Third, we ignore warning signs that would normally give us pause because we are so convinced of our momentum that any contrary information seems irrelevant. This is how fortunes are built in months and destroyed in days. The hunter's great bet was on an obscure commodity. He had noticed a pattern in the charts, a cycle that repeated every 8 weeks. Prices would rise, then fall, then rise again, with a regularity that seemed mechanical. He had tested his theory on small trades, and it had worked perfectly. Of course it had worked. In any sufficiently long series of random data, you will find apparent patterns. It is the curse of dimensionality. If you search for 1,000 different patterns in 1,000 different data series, you will find dozens that seem significant purely by chance. But the hunter did not know this. Or, if he knew, he had forgotten. He saw the cycle, saw his small victories, and concluded he had found a money-making machine. He sold everything he owned, his house, his car, his wife's jewelry. Then he went to the banks and used his recent history of successes as collateral for massive loans. The bankers, impressed with his returns, lent him sums that would make ancient emperors look poor. And he put everything, every penny, every borrowed coin, into a single position. He bet that the commodity's price would rise in the next week, as his pattern had predicted. The leverage he used was so extreme that a movement of just 2% against him would result in total liquidation. But he wasn't worried. He had the hot hand. The universe was on his side. Imagine the scene. It's a Monday night and the Asian markets are opening. The hunter is sitting in his worn leather chair, surrounded by his mountains of prophetic paper, watching red and green numbers dance on his screens. His heart beats with the confidence of a man who knows the future. During the first hours, the price moves sideways. He smiles. It's exactly as predicted, a period of consolidation before the rise. But then, something happens. An unexpected production report is released from the other side of the world. The commodity supply is much larger than any analyst had predicted. The price begins to fall, slowly at first. The hunter isn't worried. It's just noise. The pattern is strong, the cycle is real, but the price keeps falling. 0.5%, 1%, 1.5%. His monitors begin flashing margin warnings. The banks want more collateral. He has no more collateral to give. At 3 a.m, when the market had moved 2.75% against his position, it was all over. Automatic liquidation. His position was forcibly closed by the broker's risk management systems. In 6 hours, a fortune that had taken years to build had evaporated. But worse than that, he now owed millions to the banks, millions he could never repay. His house would be seized, his assets frozen, his financial life annihilated. And all for what? Because he believed the universe had given him a sign, because he mistook a random sequence of successes for skill, because he fell into the oldest psychological trap of human speculation. The final irony of the hunter's story is that the following week, the commodity's price did in fact rise, exactly as his pattern had predicted. But he was no longer in the game to benefit. He had been expelled by the random movement that liquidated his position. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. Even a false pattern will occasionally produce the predicted result. But that doesn't validate the pattern. It doesn't transform pseudoscience into science. It doesn't turn superstition into strategy. And it certainly doesn't justify betting your entire life on a conviction born of coincidence. But the hunter represents all of us. Every amateur trader who has a lucky streak and decides to quit their job. Every investor who beats the market for 2 consecutive years and concludes they're a genius. Every cryptocurrency speculator who turns 1,000 into 100,000 and immediately seeks to turn 100,000 into 10 million. The hot hand fallacy does not discriminate. It destroys equally the sophisticated and the naive, because it exploits not our lack of knowledge, but the very architecture of our brains. Research in neuroscience reveals why we are so susceptible to this illusion. When we experience a series of successes, our brain releases dopamine, the neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. This dopamine release not only makes us feel good, it literally alters our perception of probability. We begin to see the world through a distorted lens where our own capacity is exaggerated and risks are minimized. It is a form of neurological intoxication. We are literally drugged by our own successes, and in this altered state of consciousness, we make decisions that no sober person would ever consider. Moreover, the hot hand fallacy is reinforced by retrospective narrative. When we look back at our series of successes, we unconsciously create a story that connects each victory in a logical progression. We forget the near failures, the moments of doubt, the elements of pure luck that intervened. In our memory, each choice seems to have been the result of brilliant analysis, each movement, evidence of our superior skill. This narrative reconstruction of the past makes it almost impossible to objectively evaluate our own capabilities. We become the unreliable narrators of our own financial lives. The brutal truth that financial markets teach us, repeatedly, mercilessly, is that in complex systems dominated by uncertainty, sequences of positive outcomes are completely normal and completely devoid of predictive meaning. If 10,000 people flip a coin 10 times, statistically about 10 of them will get 10 consecutive heads. These 10 people have not developed special coin flipping skill. They simply represent the tail of the probability distribution. But if you ask these 10 people why they were so successful, each one will give you an elaborate explanation about risk technique, launch angle, or mystical intuition. Human beings cannot accept that pure chance can produce extraordinary results. We need meaning. We need causality. We need to believe we control our destiny. This need for control is precisely what makes the hot hand fallacy so dangerous in modern markets. We live in an age of algorithmic trading, of artificial intelligence, of quants and supercomputers processing more information in 1 second than a human could process in 1,000 lifetimes. And yet, even in this technological environment, human psychology remains unchanged. A trader can use the most sophisticated models, the most comprehensive data, the most advanced technology, but if they experience a string of successes, their primitive brain will take control. They will increase their bets, they will relax their risk criteria, they will begin to believe they have transcended the normal limitations of uncertainty, and eventually, inevitably, reality will collect its tribute. The great mathematician and speculator Ed Thorpe, one of the few men who genuinely developed systems of mathematical advantage in casinos and markets, wrote something profound about this phenomenon. He said that the difference between a winning system and a losing system is not in the win rate, but in the discipline of recognizing when your wins are the result of edge and when they are the result of variance. A professional poker player can win 10 hands in a row and still recognize that this means nothing about the next 10 hands. But an amateur with the same sequence will convince himself that he has discovered some ineffable secret of the game. The skill is not in winning. The skill is in understanding why you won, and this is the rarest skill of all. The fate of the hunter, after his ruin, was tragic but instructive. He did not learn his lesson. Like most victims of the hot hand fallacy, he rationalized his failure as an anomaly, a unique and unpredictable event. Bad luck, not bad strategy. He spent the following years trying to rebuild his system, searching for new patterns, new cycles, new ways to predict the unpredictable. He died poor and bitter, still convinced that the universe had conspired against him, unable to the end to accept the simple and devastating truth. There are no patterns. There are no cycles. There is no hot hand. There is only probability and our infinite capacity to deceive ourselves about it. This, then, is the lesson of the fable. When you experience a sequence of financial successes, it is not a sign that you have developed superior skill. It is not evidence that you have discovered some unique insight that others have missed. It is not permission to increase your risk or your confidence. It is simply what statisticians call random clustering, the natural manifestation of stochastic processes, and it means absolutely nothing about your future results. The market has no memory. It does not know that you won on the last 5 trades. It does not care about your winning streak. Each new decision you make faces exactly the same probabilities as the first. No more favorable, no more controlled, just the cold, indifferent facts of reality. This is why the most successful speculators in history are not those who seek hot streaks. They are those who maintain iron discipline regardless of recent results. They are those who treat each decision as independent and new. They are those who deeply understand the difference between processes and outcomes. You can have an excellent process and experience a losing streak. You can have a terrible process and experience a winning streak. Financial maturity is judging yourself by the process, not by the results. It is resisting the neurological intoxication of successes. It is remaining humble and skeptical, especially when everything seems to be working perfectly. If there is one message that must be engraved in fire in the mind of every speculator, it is this: distrust your successes more than your failures. Your failures will make you cautious. Your successes will make you arrogant. And arrogance in financial markets is always punished. Always. Without exception. The universe is patient, but its patience is not mercy. It is simply indifference. And eventually, inevitably, regression to the mean will come for you. It will come for your excess confidence, for your exaggerated risks, for your belief that this time is different, that you are special, that the laws of probability somehow do not apply to you because you are hot. Subscribe to this channel to discover the hidden truths that markets conceal, to understand not how to get rich quickly, but why the pursuit of quick riches destroys us. Because in these dark fables, in these stories of ruin and illusion, we find something more valuable than money. We find wisdom. And in markets as in life, wisdom is not knowing what to do next. It is knowing what you cannot know. It is accepting the vastness of your own ignorance. It is recognizing that when you feel hottest, most invincible, most certain of your own genius, you are at the exact moment of greatest danger. This is the lesson of the hot hand, and the only way to survive it is to never believe you possess it.